Hi, bird. How are you doing? How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi. Do you know where Jill lives? Where's Jill? See you later. Hi.
Oh, hey. Hi. Where's your bike?
Oh, just down there. It's okay.
You sure?
Yeah,
Okay, there.
it's fine. The parakeet will look over it.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. It's a photograph at night of the back of a container. I think it's like at a stop of some sort. It's on the road. There's a car driving in. So it's that night scene that in terms of the lighting. It's the back of a truck. And on the truck is a kind of a printed plastic canvas with Animals Asia logo on it with a subtext of kindness in action. Mm-hmm. I know this photograph is amazing and important. So why don't you explain what this photograph is about?
Yeah, it's surreal, isn't it? It's just a truck by the look of it on the road, but it's anything but, because it contains a very precious cargo of bears inside. And it's one of 12 trucks on 3 different phases, which amounted to, 29 trucks. No, sorry, I'm sorry, 26, I think it's 9, 18... 25 trucks of bears over 3 different phases, rescuing 101 bears in total over each trip was 750 miles. So It was an incredible journey and quite the most ambitious thing that we have ever undertaken in the history of Animals Asia. And it was, going back to 2013 when we first were invited by a bear farm owner in Nanning in Guangxi province in China to work with him and close the bear farm that he was running down.
So what? He invited, okay, so you're going to have to walk me through the history, which is therefore going to walk the listeners through the history of, okay, so this guy owns a bear farm. Yep. And already bear and farm aren't words we were used to. And there's something fishy or something unusual or something. So explain what that's all about.
So bear bar farming began in actually North Korea in the early 80s. And it was a technique, if you like, that was learned by China in, again, the early mid-1980s, whereby bears were ostensibly saved from being caught in the wild and killed in the wild for their whole gallbladders, which is used in traditional Asian medicine. And the Chinese government figured that if you kept bears in tiny wire cages and milked them of their bile or extracted their bile and kept them alive at the same time, you could be saving their wild counterparts, which of course was a well-intentioned initiative, but not really working, because bear bar farmers, when their bears inevitably die as a result of the infection because of the crude bile extraction methods, they're still taking bears from the wild to supplement the bear bar farms. So it's an industry that we know can be replaced by herbs and by synthetics, that you don't need a bear in this day and age to perform the function that bear bile carries out on human health. Wow. So, but sadly it involves thousands of bears across the Asia continent, predominantly again in China, but also in Vietnam, a few farms in Laos and Myanmar as well. Wow. And it's just a topic that's very dear to the heart of Animals Asia. It's our founding goal to end bear bar farming. And we have done exactly that in Vietnam. Wow. And, we are working with the authorities in China to help protect as many bears as we can in the country and work towards the same conclusion as Vietnam.
Right. Okay. Let's rewind the tape, go back a few years in the time machine. You're living what country? When you first started? When you first got alerted to bear bile conservation, Animals Asia.
Hong Kong.
You're living in Hong Kong.
I came here in 1985, from the UK with my then husband, who's an airline pilot, and remained chairman of our board, so very good friends still to this day. But I've always loved animals ever since I was a kid, and when I came here, I immediately met someone that was walking his cat on the beach. And I thought he looked like an interesting guy. So I went over and said hello. And it turned out he was the Asia representative for the International Fund for Animal Welfare.
Oh, okay.
And we got talking, and I'd always supported IFOR back in the UK,
Yeah.
done fundraising for them.
Oh, wow.
So I just said, if ever you need a volunteer, I'd love to, work with you. And he did. And I started being a volunteer, and then I became a paid employee. And then when he left Hong Kong, I took over his job.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of undercover investigations in the live animal markets
Wow.
of China, South Korea, the Philippines,
Wow.
and setting up programs like Dr. Dog here
Amazing.
in Hong Kong in those early days.
Wow. Okay. So you're obviously a gifted underachiever. You're not ambitious in the least.
You know what? There's so many doors that open in animal welfare all the time.
Well,
The
unfortunately.
the trick is not to take on too much, actually,
Oh,
because
wow.
you could just be burning yourself out in a week by taking
Right,
everything on.
right.
And I think that's how we founded in 1998. I think we wanted to do everything to help every animal in the Asia continent. And we very quickly learned to focus on 3 main projects, which is
Right.
how it turned out.
Right.
Ending dog and cat eating, ending bear bar farming, and helping captive animals as much as we could.
Okay, wow. Okay, this podcast is a labor of love, and I essentially kind of look in the world and I say, who would be amazing to talk to? And then I go to them. And then it's a reflection of my interest.
Right.
And so anybody who listens to this podcast and they say, Rand, you say wow all the time. I was like, wow, because you're so amazing. Now, it's dumb. It's dumb to have this podcast because it's a podcast where the frame of the podcast is photographs,
Yeah.
which is audio, which is visual, but the podcast is audio.
Yeah.
And the one thing that readers, listeners, what can't see is your face. I wish I could show your face because you have the nicest face. Your smile is so nice. And okay, so the warmth is coming out and it's really, it's amazing. So let's get back to this because how long did it, so there were
101 bears.
101 bears.
Yeah.
What's the species?
Asiatic black bears or
Asiatic.
moon bears because of
Okay.
the beautiful yellow crescent on their chest.
Okay.
And this picture really moves me a great deal. It really, really makes me a mix of emotions because it's a sense of relief that after 8 years, of perpetual stress and overwhelming difficulties and, along the way for everybody in the team, we were finally able to bring those bears home.
How big is the team?
Oh, well,
Rough
the
numbers.
whole team for Animals Asia, we've got over 300 staff members. So it's really mushroomed over I know, if you'd thought, there were
Wow.
5 of us that started it in my room
Wow.
in Clearwater Bay Road, all those years ago, 23 years ago. And never did I think we would be at the extent that we are today.
Amazing.
But, it's been a huge journey. But this has been a chunk of our lives
But
of nanning.
it's huge. I've always associated moon bears. I've been here since 2003. Because my interest leans into conservation, I've always kind of known of the work that you do. And that's always been a kind of a signpost or a flag, in terms of the moon bears. It's such a visual and not visual, but it's such an iconic sort of symbol for Animals Asia. And now, as you say, it took 8 years to get these 101 plus bears. I am sure it's such an achievement. But then, walk me through that moment when it was kind of clear that was the accomplishment. Like what you mean, like you're working, trying to get this to happen, and then finally the good news comes in.
Yeah.
When was that moment?
We just had so much red tape over the years because the facility was being taken over by different companies, and so the bears were caught up in what was a horticulture centre. So every time the facility got taken over, all of our agreements sort of went by the wayside, and we had to wait again and again and again for more officials to sign off. And they were sympathetic, there was no doubt about it, but it just was caught up, in bureaucracy. And I have to say, it was in April when we got finally the green light, and we actually got the green light last year, but then COVID hit.
Right.
So everything went back to square one. And I can't tell you, just being on that precipice of having the rescue, only to have the rug taken completely from under our feet again,
Right.
was so morale damaging for the entire organisation, not just for the guys on the ground, but for everybody, because we had been waiting so long for that moment. And then suddenly in April, we finally got the paperwork. And I remember Boris, our China director, China's founding director, sorry, he just phoned me and he just said, guess what I've got in my hand,
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. And I just sat down and absolute mush. I think I swore terribly.
You're allowed to swear as much as you like, as terribly. By the way, a couple of things. I noticed that every time I say "wow," a pigeon shits.
Right.
So it's just like just on the side.
These are my rescued pigeons. So, the moment is indescribable because
sure.
it was just a lightning bolt that went through the whole organisation.
Yeah.
That we had done it, and
Wow.
now we had to act quickly. And I guess kudos to Ryan. I've got to say to Ryan and his whole team in Chengdu, the Bear and
Right.
Vet team, for scrambling as they did. I mean, we've been preparing for this day for years and years, but to actually execute it is a different thing, you
Right.
know, and to, think about all the mechanics of moving a group of 29 bears, then another group of 29 bears, and then another group of, how many was it? 19 bears.
Wow.
It was just amazing,
Yeah.
to be thinking how we're going to get those bears
How many
home.
bears per truck, per car, per container?
Four bears per truck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Jeez, that's a lot of bird
it was
shit
a
coming
lot.
down. Because I keep saying wow. Amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Amazing.
And the whole thing was like 55 hours from,
Right.
from going into the bear sheds that morning
Yeah.
to loading them into
Yeah.
the transport and even loading them. You imagine coaxing bears
Sure.
that have been in cages all their life for bile extraction,
Right.
knowing the physical and psychological damage that has done to them.
Oh, okay.
And then asking them to go into another cage to be transported 750 miles back to our centre. You think that would be an impossible task. But again, it's this exquisite organisation of
Wow.
Ryan and team that actually made this a positive experience for the bears, feeding them with wonderful food, always in their transport cages, and making this a pleasurable outcome for them. So that they walk into the cage, they go, yep, what's happening? What have we got? So that was phenomenal, that they had the scaffolding, they had forklift trucks, they were moving bears up and down, obviously from the bear cages down onto the floor, then moving them along to the trucks, more forklifts onto the trucks. And these most stressful circumstances for the bears,
Sure.
but all the time they were giving positive reinforcement
Right,
and just
right.
making the bears' lives as, comfortable as
Sure.
they could, pre-journey and during the journey and post, obviously, loading.
Where is the destination?
The destination is our bear sanctuary in Chengdu.
Okay.
So we had already rescued 285 bears at that centre. And, that was, we started doing that over 20 years ago. So we had a natural attrition rate of bears. And so we had the room to bring these 101 bears onto site. And now it's a whole new sanctuary.
Right.
A lot of the bear workers have never seen young bears.
Okay.
They've just been seeing old doddery
Right.
guys that,
Right.
are playing in slow motion and needing a lot of medical care. And now they've got all these young juvenile bears that are going, yay,
So what's the sad side of this story? Is this you saved these bears, but has this created a kind of a pocket of demand where somebody else is going to come and say, "Oh, I can create a new bear farm"?
Absolutely not. No, this was the good thing about the bear farmer. He was a Buddhist when he took over the horticulture centre. He hadn't, really known what bear farming was, and as soon as he did realise what it was, he was horrified. And he also had a very young daughter who saw the bears
Right.
and was completely against the practice too. So that's why he contacted
Right.
us,
Right,
it was
right.
unprecedented, and said,
is
I
this-
want out of the industry. It's
But
cruel.
is this the end?
That's the end. The bear farm has closed down. It's closed for good. And so the horticulture centre just lives on without the bears
You're
now.
a
So
champion.
it's done. And
Blush.
that's what makes us feel even
Please, you're amazing.
happier.
You're amazing.
There's still a long way to go.
Of
There's
course.
thousands of bears that need help. But this was something that we wanted to do kindly and sensitively to show the government and the authorities that no one is going to be criticised, that
Right.
no one's going to have the finger pointed at them, and that this bear farmer that gave up his bears was a hero, that we could do this without any bad PR and
Sure,
press
sure.
for them, which we did.
It's amazing.
And people are seeing that on the internet, that we're just praising everybody that helped us to get those bears safely home.
Right. Amazing. Let's move on to the next photo.
Okay.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting